Johnny Valiant didn't suffer fools, and apparently he didn't suffer co-workers either. Half manager, half fast-talking fever dream from the Bronx, Johnny V was equal parts charisma and chaos. If you looked at him and thought, that guy definitely screams at waiters, you'd be right. And if you worked with him in wrestling, God help you. Valiant had beef thicker than Dino Bravo's neck, and it was always served raw. This ain't kayfabe. This is 5 real-life heat feuds. Valiant had with wrestlers, promoters, and egos that pissed him off enough to turn every green room into a grudge match. Let's ride. Johnny Valiant hated managing Brutus Beefcake like a drunk hates a take breathalyzer. This was a guy who strutted around like he invented wrestling, but all he really did was stand there looking like a rejected shampoo commercial with a shitload of hairspray and zero talent. Managing Brutus was like trying to keep a goddamn houseplant alive. Pointless, frustrating, and every time you turned your back, it's dead or pissing you off. Brutus wasn't the barber yet, but his hair alone could have stopped traffic. Too bad the only thing that hair ever cut was Johnny's patience. Beefcake was the kind of cocky prick who thought because he had a pretty face and big hair, the world owed him a main event spot. Johnny had to babysit this giant toddler who couldn't string together a promo, but sure as hell knew how to pose for the mirror like he was God's gift to wrestling. Johnny said managing Brutus was like holding a greased pig who thinks he's royalty, and he wasn't wrong. Beefcake acted like the company's top dog, but he was really just Hogan's fucking lapdog, stealing all the good shit while Johnny cleaned up the backstage mess. The real kicker? Brutus treated Johnny like his personal servant, and Johnny's patience wore thinner than Brutus's wrestling skills. The guy was lazy, entitled, and about as useful as a fart in a spacesuit. If Johnny could have taken that mop of hair and shoved it up Brutus's ass, he would have, just to shut the pretty boy up. Managing Brutus Beefcake was a nightmare wrapped in hairspray and ego. But Johnny didn't just hate it, he despised it. Because when you bust your ass for the business and the other guy's biggest talent is looking at himself in a goddamn mirror, it's enough to make you lose your mind. If Johnny Valiant ever had a recurring nightmare in the 1980s, it probably involved Bill Watts storming into a locker room with a clipboard, a boner for control, and a rulebook written in pure horseshit. Johnny hated Bill Watts, not wrestling heat, not passive backstage politics. I'm talking full-blown, throat-punch-level loathing. Watts was the kind of guy who ran his territory like it was a goddamn prison yard. You couldn't wear flip-flops in the building. You couldn't eat fried chicken in your gear. You couldn't even take a piss without permission if Bill was in the building. Johnny came up in New York where you worked stiff, worked smart, and got paid. Then he hits Mid-South and finds himself under General Patton running a wrestling company like it's the Marine Corps. Johnny said the problem with Watts wasn't just that he was a control freak, it was that he was a dumb control freak. The guy could book heat, sure, but his idea of discipline was to scream at you until your ears bled, then fine you for not smiling. Johnny once joked that if Watts ran a daycare, the toddlers would unionize just to get juice boxes. There were no second chances under Watts. If you missed a show, you're blackballed. If you questioned his logic, you're suspended. If you said in front of a child in Oklahoma, you're crucified and replaced by a football player with 2 left feet and a crew cut. Johnny hated the whole goddamn thing. He hated the booking, the vibe, the fake morality, and most of all, he hated that Bill walked around like Vince McMahon with less charisma and more white guilt. And Johnny didn't keep it quiet. He lit Watts up in interviews, called him a dictator, said he was that kind of guy who'd make you run drills for missing a handshake. That's not wrestling, that's fascism with turnbuckles. Johnny didn't just want out. He wanted Watts to step on a rake, fall off a scaffold, and land face first in a vat of his own shit. Johnny Valiant hated Vince McMahon Sr. like a priest hates a camera crew. You know that kind of hatred that's slow, cold, and builds over time until it's a pressure cooker waiting to blow? That's what Johnny had for Vince Sr., a man who ran the WWF like a cigar-smoking ghost with a bank account. You didn't talk back. You didn't question him. And if you thought loyalty meant you were the punchline. Johnny came into Vince Sr.'s system expecting respect. What he got was silence, distance, and the kind of corporate cold shoulder that makes you rethink your entire career. Vince Sr. wasn't loud like his son. He didn't need to yell. He just looked at you like you were gum on his shoe and somehow made you feel 2 inches tall. Valiant busted his ass for the company, worked the roads, got over, drew money, and what did he get in return? Nothing. No thanks, no handshake, not even a hot dog and a ride. Vince Sr. treated Johnny like a rental car. Drive it hard, return it broken, and forget it ever existed. In shoot interviews, Johnny dropped that old school mafia energy about Vince Sr., called him a cold, calculating prick who never gave a damn about the boys. You could be bleeding out in the back, Johnny once said, and Vince would ask if you clocked out first. That's not a boss. That's a goddamn funeral director running a wrestling company. Worse, Johnny watched other ass-kissers rise through the ranks while he got phased out like yesterday's news. No loyalty, no payoff, just a silent you behind a three-piece suit and a marble desk. Vince Sr. ran the show like a silent partner in a mob hit. All power, no fingerprints. Johnny didn't hate Vince Sr. because he was loud. He hated him because he wasn't. Because he let you rot and never even looked your way. That's not business. That's ice-cold betrayal in a necktie. Johnny Valiant hated Vince McMahon Jr. Not just the usual boss screwed me hate. We're talking pure, visceral, this guy ruined wrestling and pissed on the ashes type of hate. Johnny watched the business go from smoky arenas and real heat to neon lights, theme songs, and Vince's boner for bodybuilders who couldn't headlock a corpse. Valiant had survived Bill Watts' boot camp, Vince Sr.'s cold stare, and Brutus Beefcake's mirror fetish. But Vince Jr.? That was the final insult. Here comes this loud-mouthed, coke-fueled carny with a fake tan and a hard-on for muscleheads, kicking down the doors of tradition like a Wall Street banker on bath salts. Johnny said it best. Vince didn't just change the business. He turned wrestling into a cartoon. He didn't want guys who could work. He wanted walking action figures with catchphrases and oil glistening off their roid tits. Johnny was old school. He believed in loyalty, in the grind, in paying dues. Vince believed in gimmicks, money, and selling out every motherfucker who got him there. And let's not forget, Johnny got discarded. No thank you, no gold watch, not even a shout out in one of Vince's phony-ass Hall of Fame love fests. Vince Jr. had no time for yesterday's stars, unless they could move merch or die dramatically. To Johnny, Vince was everything wrong with wrestling rolled into a single overconfident prick in a headset. He took a craft, a brotherhood, and a real man's business, and turned it into a circus where your push depended on your pecs, not your psychology. Johnny didn't hate Vince Jr. because he was loud. He hated him because he won. He killed the business Johnny loved, threw his bones in the trash, and danced on the grave with a pyro show. Johnny Valiant didn't hate quietly. He hated like a man who'd been screwed, stepped on, and tossed aside by the same people he made money for. He wasn't bitter. He was surgical. 4 names, 4 reasons why he probably drank his coffee black and his whiskey by the gallon. He didn't just leave wrestling. He carved his way out like a pissed-off surgeon with a grudge and a blade. What he hated most wasn't the business. It was what the business let in. The preening, the power tripping, the fake loyalty wrapped in suits, perms, and empty promises. They used him, bled him dry, then acted like he was never there. He didn't forget. He didn't forgive. He lit up the truth like a Molotov cocktail in a church basement, loud, hot, and sacrilegious. No sweet farewells. No corporate thank yous. Just a middle finger, a gravel-voiced shoot interview, and the kind of honesty that leaves bruises. He didn't burn bridges. He bulldozed them, salted the earth, and pissed on the ashes. Because if the business won't honor the ones who bled for it, business. If you enjoyed this, press subscribe and like for more unfiltered heat, shoot rants, and legends who refuse to play nice. This ain't nostalgia, it's payback. Thanks for watching.